Cool. Thank you to Rolf from Rocket Labs and to Fernanda from Elance for sponsoring the event tonight and hosting us. So we're here in Copenhagen tonight. We have a couple of people joining us from Oslo as well. So we're going to give them a call and then add Dan to the call. So yeah, I'm going to call Oslo and I'll introduce Dan when I'm on the call with Oslo as well.
Hey, can you see us?
Yes, we can see you. Can you see us?
Yes, we can see you.
Cool. So this is VIP VoIP. Today we're joined by Dan Martell. So Dan's the founder of Clarity. What I'm hoping he'll talk about today is his experiences. So he actually had a rough childhood and was in rehab and in prison, and he discovered computers there. And he went on to sell some companies, crash some companies, and now he's building the next Google in his eyes. So I'm hoping it'll be really interesting. He's certainly got some cool stories to tell us. So we're going to add him to the call now.
Neil.
Hey, Dan.
Cool. I've never done like 2 videos.
Yeah. So I take it you can see us.
Yeah, here we go.
Cool. So welcome. You're with a room of entrepreneurs in Copenhagen and in Oslo as well. So probably a good place to start is just to give a little background on what Clarity is and a little bit about who you are.
Well, so first question, Neil, I mean, obviously Crystal helped put this together. And,
yeah.
Like, who are these people?
Yeah.
Who are you guys?
Yeah, so we're a group of entrepreneurs from Copenhagen, Denmark, and Oslo in Norway. And I think we're a kind of variety of different stages. So there's some people who are students and interested in entrepreneurship, and there's some people who are already building companies. And I think that the purpose of this event is for us to hear from people who are kind of maybe not likely to come and visit us physically. So maybe we miss out on hearing about people's experiences. So we thought the best way to do it would be to do it over something like Skype, Google Hangouts, etc. So we could hear directly and kind of not miss out on that experience. So we're at a variety of stages.
All right. Well, first off, thanks for having me. I mean, I am ridiculously passionate about entrepreneurs. So everybody in the room know that I say this and people don't get it, but if entrepreneurs didn't get up every day to actually make the world a better place, and everybody wouldn't enjoy all the stuff that you guys create. So thank you for that. I truly mean that. So what's Clarity? So Clarity is obviously my startup. I'm the founder. It's been 2 years. Clarity is a marketplace for business advice. We're kind of like eBay for business advice. Most people use Clarity for 3 different use cases. One is to do market research or customer development or user testing, where you need to talk to like 10 doctors, 10 teachers, 10 VP of marketing, 10 entrepreneurs, et cetera, to get feedback on your idea, or do user testing or show them product demos. The other use case is for specialized skills or learning something. So how do you set up Google Analytics? How do you write an algorithm where you need to talk to a machine learning PhD stats specialist? That kind of thing. And then the third one, which is what most people know us for, which is strategic advice to grow your business, which is everything from fundraising to legal questions to marketing to should I move my business to Silicon Valley or not, et cetera, et cetera. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, 15 years now. I've started 5 companies. The first 2 when I was 17 and 18 were complete failures. Luckily, I was young enough to bounce back. And then when I was 24, I think I figured it out, but I think I've gotten better since then. And I grew a company from nothing, bootstrapped it in a small town in Canada to servicing some of the world's largest Fortune 50 customers. We grew it to 30 employees and got acquired in 2008. I then moved to Silicon Valley from Canada, and because much like you guys, you read about TechCrunch and you wonder if this place really like that. And the crazy part is, it turns out it is. It's like Disneyland for startups. It's bananas. And I moved there. I took a year to just study, and then I started a company called Flowtown. Flowtown grew. We grew it to 50,000 small business customers, raised venture capital, and then got acquired in 2011 by Demandforce. I then stayed about 3 months because I came up with this crazy idea to essentially, I wanted to index everybody's brains and make it accessible to the world. And I just couldn't sleep at night, and I decided I had to leave. I walked away from my earnout, which sounds really crazy. And my wife was kind of like, "What are you doing?" And I believe, there's a longer story, but the short story is 2 months after I left, the company acquired us, got bought by Intuit, and all the stock that I had issued that I wouldn't have gotten actually converted. So I ended up getting, even though I left to start Clarity because I was passionate about it, I ended up still getting 70% of the earnout that I was walking away from. So, I just call that fate and universe and luck, where, I think the universe rewards courageous decisions. And I've been working on Clarity for 2 years, and I travel around. I'm also an investor in startups. I've invested in about 28 companies like Unbounce, Get Around, I don't even want, Intercom.io, et cetera, et cetera. And I love to speak and talk to entrepreneurs, and I've done over 1,400 calls on Clarity. So I love to talk. I suck at email. So if you email me, you will get a 2 or 3 word reply. But know that if you ever get the chance to talk to me, clearly I will talk your ear off.
Cool. So you've already, you were at started a couple of companies before you started Clarity. I'm kind of interested in, you introduced Clarity as the kind of eBay, but you also mentioned Google and indexing information. I came across an interview with you where you talked about you could, this could be the next Google, but it's about people's brains rather than indexing that information. Is that still the vision, or is it now a different type of marketplace?
I mean, not only is it my vision, Google launched helpouts to probably compete in the same space. So I think they saw the opportunity as well. They're very much going over, focused on consumers, like learning how to play guitar, cooking lessons, et cetera. Google sucks at social products, like Yelp, and they're not going to be able to compete. Anyways, they're not as passionate about this problem as I am, so I'm not even worried about that. But, Clarity's kind of like 3 phases. Phase 1 was me building this really dinky app to manage inbound requests for my time, and it was like a call list. Like, most people think that I came up with the idea for Clarity, it looks like what it looks like today. Not true. The first version was a URL that you could put your name, your number, and what you wanted to talk to me about, and I would use that in replies to email, and it would just build a list of people to talk to. When I was free and driving for an hour, I would actually hit start calls, and it would cycle through all the calls. I built it for me. There was no big vision for Clarity. That's why it's clarity.fm. I needed a domain. It was $18. Giddy up. But the night that I went on the roof of my apartment at the time and tweeted out the link and said, what would happen if I shared this to my Twitter followers? At the time, I had like 20,000 followers. And all of a sudden, my list just queued up with people that have been following me on Twitter for 2, 4, 5 years, all over the world, from Korea to India. And I spent 4 hours talking to these entrepreneurs in 15-minute chunks. I just thought, like, this needs to be available to everybody, and not just for my advice, but the world's advice. And that's when I decided to go full force. Where we're at today is kind of the middle part, where we've built the marketplace, we've built liquidity, we've built the compression and the supply side and the demand. But my vision, much to the indexing of the brain, is the day that you could be driving and talk to your phone through Siri, et cetera, maybe through your Google glasses, and say, I want to talk to 3 entrepreneurs that own restaurants in this city, and boom, 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 here they are. Call John. You talk to John. He answers. It's real time, and it's just amazing. So that's way out in the distance, but we clearly have progressed towards that. And I don't think it's that far away. I think it's probably only about 1.5 years away where we can actually deliver on that experience.
Cool. Really interesting. I'm going to come back to Clarity in a bit, but I just wanted to take it back. I pitched this event as Dan Martell. He used to be a bad boy, so I'm going to have to deliver on that and question you about your past. So I wanted to go back a little bit before you started your first company, and just I read you had a troubled childhood. You're in trouble, but you turned your life around and then started some companies. I just wanted to know how you got from a low point to then deciding that entrepreneurship was what you wanted to do.
Yeah. When I talk to people that don't know that part of me, I just kind of jokingly say I had a colorful childhood, which makes my dad and my whole family kind of laugh. Here's what I've learned about entrepreneurs, and I don't know if any of the people in the audience can relate, but the thing that I've realized over the years is, when I ask entrepreneurs, when you were 11 to 13 years old, did you ever experience a chaotic moment, right? And for some people, they go, yeah, my mom died when I was 11, or yeah, I'm actually adopted and I was blah, blah, blah. For me, I grew up in a home with an alcoholic mother, and my dad was in sales, always on the road. So, and I was the second oldest of 4 kids, and, I was diagnosed with ADHD, et cetera, et cetera. And, by the time I was 11, I was taken out of my home, put into foster care, and I spent like the next 5-6 years in the system, right? And I ended up getting into drugs, and by the time I was 15, I went to jail for the first time. I got out and said, never again, I'm going to clean up my life. And a year later, I'm in a high-speed chase and blah, 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 and find myself sentenced for another year. Luckily, I did all this before I became an adult. I was 17. And I went to this place called Portage, and Portage was kind of like this place in the middle of the woods on a lake, that had this really interesting approach to substance abuse and troubled teenagers. And I spent 11 months there learning about myself, learning about what made me tick, my emotions. And I credit today to this, when people, I remember I was speaking in Waterloo, and this guy came up to me after, he said, hey, Dan, I'm just curious, why do you think you're such a risk taker? And this is before I'd ever told anybody about my story. Just so you know, that story I just told you, I didn't tell the world for 15 years. Nobody. I added that section on my blog a year ago. And since then, it's obviously something that resonates with people. And I was ashamed, and obviously I'm not. And I'm glad I finally, tell that story, because I usually get 2 or 3 people from every audience emailing me resonating. But this kid asked me, why do you think you're such a risk taker? And I kind of laughed. I said, you want to know the real story? What I do every day in business is not even registering on the risk level for the stuff I used to do, right? I took care of myself. I lived on the streets. I ran away. I was being chased by cops. The business stuff I do, worst case, I lose it all, and I call my brother and he lets me sleep on his couch for 6 months while I build it back up. So, I get what you're saying, because maybe you didn't live through that kind of life, but to me, it's all relative. So, I don't wish any different childhood. I feel blessed that I got to go to a place like Portage and learn all these lessons. It was there that I learned at 17 years old that the only advice you should ever take is from somebody who's been through it before, right? Because the treatment facility that we were part of, all the staff were ex-drug addicts, but guys who did 15 years in jail because they were trafficking heroin to Mexico, right? So when they talked, you listened. And I didn't realize it then, but clarity is an extension of what I learned when I was 17, trying to get clean and not end up back in jail. So, I owe everything, my life, and now my relationship with my dad and my mom and my whole family. It's just it's kind of when I think about that moment in time, it's like watching a movie, because if you got to come and see I have 2 beautiful baby boys and my wife and my whole family. It's just not even part of our life. And, but I'm not ashamed of it, and I still go back and talk to the kids every 3 months at Portage, and I've been obviously, as much as I can give back and donate to help build the facility and support them, it's who I am today. So yeah, the lesson I learned at 17 ended up being the backbone for this idea called clarity.
Cool. The reason why I brought it up, and the reason why I was interested in hearing about that part of your life, was actually because I wanted to ask you whether you would change anything or whether it made you get to where you are now. You kind of already covered that, but that was the reason why I wanted to ask you about that. But the other reason was because that's where you also discovered computers, right? And that's where it changed your life, or what was the thing that all of a sudden you thought, okay, this is enough. I need to do something else.
When you meet these kids, and I was one of them, I learned everything from cash flow by dealing drugs, right? Fronting people drugs that they paid me later. I learned about negotiation, hustling. People use the word hustle, and I laugh, because my version of hustle and yours are 2 different things. And I would put my hustle against your hustle every day, because it's true hustle. So I love going and talking to these kids, and because I tell them, I was like, look, if you have any aspirations to do what I've done with my life, just know that you're better positioned than anybody else in the world, because you already got the fundamentals, right? You know that you can self-sustain. And that's where, going back to my previous comment about, most of the entrepreneurs that I meet that are super successful, and I ask them, did you have that chaotic moment growing up? They can point directly to it, because what happens at a very young age, you learn that you can take care of yourself, and that's powerful. Now, if you don't find an outlet for that, it can kill you, like it almost did for me. But if you discover entrepreneurship and you have a moral code, etc., it can be the most powerful thing that'll allow you to keep doing what you do every day, where everybody else would have just given up.
So were computers how you passed your time when you were in there, or when was that point in your life? You were 17, 18?
I was 16, 17 when I went to rehab. What happened was I they had a computer. This is ridiculous. It wasn't even connected to the internet. Somebody donated it. I mean, we're in the middle of the woods, right? Like, I mean, we had a telephone, but that was about it. Like, it was, you know, they built it there so that if you tried to run away, it would take you like 6 hours to walk to the nearest town. And anybody that lived on that road knew not to pick up teenagers because you probably came from this place, Portage. So, you know, they had a computer, no internet, and there was this book called Java Programming, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, interesting. And see, you know, growing up, everybody said I was stupid or I wasn't smart or I had ADHD. And I read this book and like, I don't know why, but math and biology has always been super fascinating to me. And I'm reading this book and I'm like, wow, this is pretty logical. Like, it's not voodoo magic. Like, you know, if I write these commands, it says this is going to happen. And I just started plugging away. So every night when everybody else was doing rec time and playing basketball, I would go up in this little office they had with like the oldest computer ever, but it ran Java. And I would like write these little apps. And as soon as I got out, I got a laptop, or not even a laptop, obviously a machine, and I discovered the internet. Like, I was late to the internet. I only got on in like 2000 or 1999, 2000, right? So, but then I discovered Visual Basic, and I was like, holy shit. The first app I ever built was it was this app that indexed all the MP3s that I had downloaded through Napster and built a playlist, FTP file that my friends could create their playlist on, click a button, and it would send my computer request to burn the CD while I was sleeping, and I would charge them $20. I was just sick of people coming to my house, and because I was the only friend of theirs with a burner, and wasting my time trying to put together their girlfriend's playlist. So, I mean, that's how I got into computers, was you know, finding it fascinating and just, you know, being disconnected from the world and just really, truly understanding programming at that level. And then obviously once I discovered the internet, here's what we forget, and I'll never forget the day that this happened for me. I created a GeoCity site, right? I don't know if, you know, the age of the room. I'm 34, but, you know, I created this site in HTML, and I used Microsoft Front Page, and I published this site. And it occurred to me I had this URL that I could tell anybody over a phone call or send an email, etc., in the world, and they could see what I built. That's powerful. All you guys take that for granted. My dad worked for 27 years. I have no effing clue what the hell he did. He never showed me. I don't think he could explain it, etc., etc. Your parents are probably in the same boat. We live in a really unique spot, and I'll never, you know, underappreciate what we have, the ability to create and share globally in seconds. And that's when I just got, man, I'm going to build websites. And then I learned all about Cold Fusion, ASP Classic, and database technologies, and I never went back to desktop, and it's been internet and mobile now for 15 years, or 10, 20, 12 years.
Cool. So you talked about your first entrepreneurial venture, charging your friends for some downloaded music. But what was your first company? What was the first startup, and how did that come about?
Yeah, so the way I look at companies versus projects are, you know, companies are ones that you incorporate thinking they'll actually, you know, make enough for you to support your living, and then projects are domains that you've bought. And I know that room, all of you guys have 15 to 20, 25 domains of ideas or projects. So, I mean, I've always, and I believe I do projects all the time. I might have an idea and I'll just like hire somebody part-time on Odesk to just hack away at some dumb whatever. But yeah, so the first company was after I did the CD burning thing. I guess it's the first time I made money with software I built. But the first company was a site called Maritime Vacation. My dad came to me one day and said, you know, you obviously know a bit about this internet thing going on. And he had a cottage at the time, and he wanted to build a web page for the cottage so that he could rent it, because people from the other province and states were calling, and he had to keep you guys forget. He used to take 15 calls a week from people to ask him the same 10 questions. What does it look like? Where is it located? Blah, blah, blah. And he goes, you know, would you build me a web page? And I was like, well, how many people are like you? Like, how many cottages do you think are there? And he's like, oh, well, in this area, there's probably 200. And I'm like, well, how many do you think are in this, you know, this state, this province? And he goes, oh, well, geez, there's probably about 1,500. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I was like, well, I could build it for you, but I'm going to have to charge you at least like $100 a month in hosting fees, because that's expensive, et cetera. And he's like, what? I just want a web page. Isn't it like $5? And I'm like, no, I got to, you know, so what I did is I got my dad to pay me for the hosting. I built it. And then here's a marketing hack for everybody else. if you're trying to get to a customer, you got to understand where they spend their time and money today. And I didn't know. I'm an introverted geek at the time. I over the years I learned how to talk to people because again I write code, and I was asking this guy that worked in tourism. I said, hey, where I need to get in front of all these cottage owners. Where would you go? And he laughed. He goes, dude, we print this book every year called the Bed and Breakfast Tourism Guide, and it's got all the listings with the name of the person that owns it and their address. And I was like, crap. So I called my little brother up. And my little brother at the time, he's like 5 years younger than me. I paid him like $3 an hour to enter in all the addresses into Microsoft Access. And then I opened up Microsoft Word and I did a mail merge. And I essentially did like physical spam. I printed off all these letters and sent them and then, licked the envelope, stamped it and put it in the mail. There was like 1,500 pieces of mail. And all it said was, hey, we're maritimevacation.ca. If you'd like a website for your cottage or your bed and breakfast, send us a check or money for $30 and 3 pictures, and we'll create a site and we'll send you back the link that you can tell people, and here's an example. And if you want your pictures back, send me another $5. And I just sent it out. I was like, maybe it'll work. Maybe people will be like, who the hell is this? It was ghetto. And about a week later, my dad picks up the mail and he's like, Dan, you got a bunch of mail. And I was like, oh, crazy. What is it? And oh, fuck. I totally forgot. I forgot I did that. And I'm starting to open it. And people put money, like cash. And I was like, man, the post people should have been stealing this. They were putting cash in envelopes, sending it to me. And I ended up putting 100 and some listings up. I made like 30 grand. And it was that was when I realized this internet thing might be something. And it was funny because I almost went into biology for school. Right? After I finished high school, I had to go back. I did 5 years of a 3-year high school program. It took me forever, obviously. And I remember telling my dad, I was like, I'm really into plants, and you guys can probably guess why. So I like biology. And he goes, Dan, you can always have a garden as a hobby. Go into this computer thing. And I lasted about 6 months into my college thing, dropped out, ended up getting a job, the only job I ever had for 6 months, left, and I've been doing companies since.
Cool. So I take it that wasn't the project or company
that
you...
was a failure.
Okay.
And it failed because I called it maritimevacation.ca, which Maritime Canada is this little part of Canada, and it was .ca. And yet this guy in Ontario had a way better name called atthecottage.com. And everybody stopped paying me and then went over. So that company, I learned a lesson about pick the right market, and don't, even if you plan on starting in your local city, local country, know that the branding and the idea needs to be expandable for you actually to build a big company, or you could be handicapping yourself right before you even get going.
Yeah, that's a great point, and actually it's something that we encounter here, especially with Danish and Norwegian having their own language. So we try and do as much in English as possible just to give us the chance on the international stage. So that's definitely something we can relate to. I take it that was a failure. So that wasn't what you bootstrapped up into $1 million company, which then got acquired. So perhaps you could talk us through a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, well, short story long. After that one failed, then I convinced my brother it was a good idea to do hosting, because anybody that builds website, and you guys are laughing, I know you guys have built websites, thought I should start a hosting company. Don't. It's the worst business you could ever be into. You're pretty much, imagine, this is back in the day, I was getting calls 24/7 because we were hosting their email, their databases. When did I ever think that was a good idea? Anyways, lost about 15 grand in that idea, did it for about a year and a half. The worst part is we actually got a bank as a customer, and we charge them 5 grand a month, but it took me all my time, so it was definitely not profitable. So, that one there, I learned don't build a commodities business. Web hosting, I didn't differentiate, and I was just trying to take relationships. That doesn't scale. And then, there was a period where essentially was a consultant for other big companies for a while, oil companies, et cetera. And it was through that experience that I started Sphere. Sphere started to do enterprise portals in 2004. So this is back in the day of the web had the Yahoo homepage and portlets and these new custom homepages. And enterprises were starting to adopt them, SharePoint portal, WebSphere, WebLogic. We specialize in a technology called Plumtree. And it was a service company, but we built some products that we used as our marketing hook. At 24, I decided, somebody asked me a few years later why I decided this. At 24, I decided to sell to the Fortune 50 companies of the world. Why? I don't know. I just thought it was a good idea. Procter & Gamble, Dole Foods, Johnson & Johnson, Novartis, all these pharmaceutical companies, I figured they should be my customer. And I will tell you, that was probably, I've done some pretty hard things since then, but trying to sell to CTOs, right, at 24 was the most ridiculous thing. I had to hire a guy named Stu who pretended to be the CEO of my company. I used to call him my gray hair, but he actually was bald, so he had no hair. And he would join conference calls, and I would like pretend like I was the director of e-business, like this young, smart person. And Stu was like and I paid him $1,000 a month to just act that role. But he would hang out the phone and then go back to his life. He was like retired. And, so that was fierce. We grew that to 30 employees doing $3.5 million a year, and then got acquired right at the top of the bubble. And then, in May of 08, and then, obviously in October of that year, the market went to craps, but I had, my earnout was 6 months and I bootstrapped it. So, I semi-retired. I bought a hot tub, a wakeboarding boat, and a cottage, and thought, what more could you want? A 28-year-old single male. And after about 3 months, I got super bored, and that's when I decided to move to San Francisco.
Cool. So you went to San Francisco. You said earlier it's the Disneyland for entrepreneurs. How long were you there? Would you recommend that people in this room spend some time there, see what it's like? Is that an important part of the journey?
You don't go there, you just don't care. You got to go. I don't care if you stay, but it's like being an actor and never going to Hollywood. That's just stupid, right? If you're in finance, you go to New York or London, don't you want to be world class? Don't you want to meet world class people? That's where they're at. I moved back to Canada. Like, my plan was never to leave, because I get to travel a lot doing that company. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to go to Silicon Valley and see if it was everything everybody said it was, and learn. And then, my aspiration was, because again, at that time I'd built a 30-person company, and I didn't think that wasn't Mark Zuckerberg outcomes. That was good. It was great for my little town of 150,000 people, but when I show up in San Francisco, and not only do they don't give a shit about my service company, nor do they care because you didn't raise money by anybody they know. They don't know you. They don't know of your company. You sold to customers they could give two shits less about having. There was no credibility extended to me whatsoever. Just so you know, I didn't show up in San Francisco with a network. I knew 0 people, and it was the most humbling experience ever. But it is the most amazing place on the earth. I still go every 7 weeks. Clarity has an office there. Our team is all over the place. And if you're in technology and you've never been to San Francisco, I have a hard time taking you seriously. I'm not saying you have to move there, but this is where the world's best entrepreneurs. Just technically speaking, the best marketers. Do you guys have world-class marketplace marketing growth hackers where you're at?
Not especially, no.
Because they don't exist. That's the funny part. Database specialists, people that understand how to scale internationally. All these people, because there's so much compression around, and clustering around all these companies in the fabric. Go there to learn, make the network, and then go back home. And fortunately, that's what I've done. And obviously, I've even extended it now. Clarity is almost like an extension of my DNA as a person. I've always been somebody that's tried to be helpful and give advice. And now I'm like, hey, I don't have to be the only guy. You have this service called Clarity. If you need advice, go on there. Eric Ries is on there. You can talk to Eric Ries for $500 and get your whole team on the call. What does it cost to fly to San Francisco and to pay to attend his event? A shit ton more than $500.
Yeah, you have a point. I don't think I can argue with that. So yeah, you definitely put across the benefits of Clarity well, even in one sentence, which I guess you pretty much have to nail in a place as serious as San Francisco.
I would not be a good CEO if I couldn't figure that one out.
Yeah, true. I'm going to ask one more question now and just see if anyone else has any questions at this point. I was actually interested in your take on, so you became a millionaire around 27, 28. And it was actually from revenue. It wasn't from evaluation it wasn't paper millionaire. It wasn't a inflated valuated company buying another inflated valuated company. It was revenue. So how important, obviously revenue is important, but it's something that people often neglect and just look to get investment immediately rather than concentrate on gaining revenue. So was that something you had to focus on?
Yeah, so I guess because I grew up in a city, and I mean, go look on a map where Moncton, New Brunswick is. It's like, where Bangor, Maine, or Maine is in the US? It's like up and to the right. It's like, there are no VCs. At the time, there were no VCs, investors. I didn't even know about that as a world, right? I didn't know that people actually gave you money for stock in your company. I mean, it would have blew my mind at 17. I just, so selling stuff to me, again, I learned it at a very young age. So I don't even know why you would do it any other way. The upside is just clear. A, you get real customer validation for your idea because nobody's going to give you even $1. I mean, somebody giving you money is more intimate than having sex. Think about that. Like, that is an intimate transaction where they had the problem that you said you could solve for them, and they're going to give you money. And when you're talking about ideas or all that stuff, like, I think I tweeted the other day, like 4 out of 5 the fastest growing companies in the US did not take venture capital, right? And I don't know what happened. Maybe it was the Social Network, the movie or whatever, but I think it's ridiculous that people just feel like you got to raise money to validate your success. I think revenue is sexy. I love entrepreneurs that come to me and say, we're cash flow break even and we're thinking of raising around only because of these factors. That's what I like. I've always done that. Every idea from Flowtown to Clarity to Spheric, I sold first and then I built. So, I mean, the first version of Clarity was me on Skype saying to one guy, hey, what would you pay to talk to Neil Patel? He's like the SEO genius. And they're like, $500 an hour. And I'm like, hey, Neil, how much for an hour of your time? He's like, 5,000. I was like, oh shit, that's not gonna work. But I learned a lot by just trying to create this interaction. Eventually I figured out, like, okay, $200 an hour for this guy. And I would schedule the call. I'd say, send me the $200 on PayPal. I would schedule it in Google Calendar using my Google Calendar. And then I would use freeconferencecall.com to set up the conference line. And that was V1 of Clarity's marketplace. It doesn't have to be like this 6-month sprint of building product. I like when people pay me because it's just the fastest way to know if I'm building anything. And with Spheric, because it was predominantly a service company, I mean, we were doing 30-40% net margins, right? And I was like, first year we did like 700,000. The second years we did 1.6 million. And it was just me. I was paying myself 40 grand a year driving a 1987 Jetta. I didn't know any different. I didn't even know. It was crazy. 2 years into the business, I actually thought that I was doing things wrong. If you don't have friends to even give you a litmus test or a pulse of, here's where I'm at and here's what I've done, what have you done? I thought I was screwing up. I thought I should be like 5 million in year 2. And then, and that's why I wish Clarity would have existed back then, because it would have set me straight. But, over the years, I eventually got to know people, and one of my friends said it took him like 10 years to break $1 million in revenue. And I was like, wow, okay, cool. Maybe I'm doing some things that are right. So, I like making money, right? Unapologetic. I try to give back, but I know that my secret power in life is actually to create value, and value usually translates to revenue or money exchange in my world. So, I think for 80% of the room out there, like, stop focusing on venture and focus on getting revenue from your customer. And don't people what about a social network? Look, if you're in Arkansas or wherever, Texas or wherever you guys are, and you're trying to build a social photo sharing app, I'm pretty sure the local community of investors don't have a clue about how that works, and you're just fighting against the norm. And if you actually said, well, what are the things that we know in this region, right? That to me, if you want to talk about the biggest lesson I learned is, don't be an idiot. Don't start a company to do photo social sharing and be upset because nobody invests in you and you live in a 90% agricultural part of the world, right? Build a farming analytics app and you will get funding and about 15 customers and you'll take over the world. So try to throttle your ideas or filter your ideas for actually what a local market and investor will want, and don't be upset if they don't get it. Get on a plane and go to where they can if you really want to do that. Cool.
Some really cool points there and some good takeaways for us, so thanks. I'm just going to open up and see if anyone has a question at this point. I just see in Oslo, have you guys got a question at all?
Not yet. Here.
Not yet. Anyone here at this point?
Come on,
Yeah,
guys.
we have one. We have one. Hang on. Come to the front. Come to the front. They're on their way.
So Neil, who
Yeah.
are you?
Who am I?
Who are you?
I moved to Copenhagen a little over a year ago, and since then I kind of just threw myself into the startup scene here. So I run this event just to like I said, let people hear from guys who wouldn't necessarily visit here, and I run other community initiatives as well.
Are you an entrepreneur, or you just run the?
Yeah. I mean, I would. I guess I'm a little uncomfortable with calling myself one. I don't know. Maybe I'm. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So,
yeah.
so
That was a yes.
Never, ever, ever not answer yes
Okay.
for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I'm giving you permission to say yes, you're an entrepreneur because you create, and you created this event, and you probably created other shit, and that's why that guy behind you said that.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Cheers, Dan. Cool. I'll hand over to the question here.
Hi, Dan. My name is Rasmus. Thank you very much for this. It's been great so far. I'm trying to build a company that is a little bit similar in dynamics with Clarity. We're sort of a marketplace where we are connecting large corporations with a world of small businesses that supply HR and employee development services. And one of the things that are very difficult that you were talking a little bit about earlier is how do you grow the supply and the demand side at the same time? So I wanted to hear from you, after you sort of verified Clarity as a case, what did you do to balance supply and demand and you know, try and grow both sides of that in parallel?
I'm just going to take a picture of you. Smile. Every marketplace has this problem. It's called liquidity. All right. So congratulate. If you've built a marketplace, we are blood brothers because it is the hardest thing to do in the world. It's twice as hard. It's like having twins. Okay. So if you've done that or doing that, congratulations, because it's not for the faint of heart. Liquidity means that there's a high expectations that if I use your service, I'm going to find somebody that's going to solve the problem you say you solve. The number one thing you got to do is focus on the demand side and fake the supply. So focus on getting people like big corporations to use your service, and on the back end, fake it all at first and just deliver on it yourself. An example would be, you know, this guy that started this self-storage online marketplace, and he would ask people like, where do you live and what are you looking for? And they'd say, well, I live in Virginia and I need 2,000 square feet for 6 months and I'm willing to pay this. And then he would take that on the back end. They would submit it to suppliers, but he would actually pick up the phone in the yellow pages and call all those companies. And once he got somebody, then he played matchmaker and he would take their money and then pay them. Okay, so you got, like, if you do it any other way, you're just working so much harder than you had to. My first version, it was really on Skype. And then it was like building a page and people came to it and, you know, focus on one niche, like, you know, you said HR and whatever, it's just too broad. Like maybe you just do communication, personal development. So your marketplace is just for helping big companies, employees learn how to communicate better, right? Vertical within the market, focus all on the supply side. And if there's a geographical component to delivery for you, we don't at Clarity because it's phone calls. But if there is, like local service providers, then you want to focus on a location as well. I call it being uncomfortably narrow. If you don't feel embarrassed telling people how small your target market is, then you're too big. So that's the biggest advice I could say is get the liquidity working on a very narrow, small thing and trust if you can do that. Because once you do that, the next step is how do you scale demand acquisition, right? Like what does it cost you to get a customer? What are your margins in your business model? And can it scale? Most people never try that because they can't get liquidity. And the ones that get liquidity then go, oh, fuck, our business model doesn't work. Well, don't wait so long to figure that out. Focus on demand, super narrow, location. Once that works for liquidity, then you focus on customer acquisition costs. And you need to obviously get it to a third of what the profit is for you, that's at the beginning of a good ratio. And great companies have a 15x ratio of customer acquisition cost versus lifetime value, but you want at least a third.
Awesome.
That's all I can give you in like a 4 or 5 minute thing. And Clarity has some of the world's best marketplace experts in the world. Plug.
No, thank you very much. Very, very, very helpful. I could ask you many more questions, but it's going to be expensive. Thanks, Dan. Take care.
You're welcome, Rasmus. Thanks for the question.
Thanks. Is there anyone else right now? Yeah? Cool, we got 2.
Hi, Dan, from a fellow
Hello.
Canadian here in Copenhagen, but from Toronto, so hi.
And your name is?
Angie.
Angie, nice to meet you.
Nice
Do
to
you
meet-
follow me on Twitter?
I am following you on Twitter, and I tweeted you today, too.
I recognize you.
So I want to know, now that I've moved across the world here, and, back there, I had a lot of, people that I could look to if I wanted to start a company.
It'll be like this meta thing where I'll be like tweeting at you and I'll be like,
Okay, so just really quick, my question is, would you recommend someone start programming if they can't find a CTO? And if not, what do you recommend someone in my position do?
that's an awesome question. I appreciate, it's one of those things where, my kids are very small. They're 7 months and like 14 months, and they will learn how to program iPhone apps if that's still the platform du jour when they can learn how to write. But, I think everybody should learn how to code at least JavaScript. It's kind of like, in today's world, it'd be equivalent to knowing how to use word processing or Excel, right? Like I really fundamentally believe if the world continues to evolve where it's Internet of Things and APIs and there'll be a day where there's a 50-person company doing $1 billion in gross revenue just through this whole structure of APIs and not needing infrastructure. So I think, yeah, you should learn how to code, but only enough to be able to understand how the app works so that you can understand how to manage product and customer expectations, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think you should build the first version, but I think if you haven't gone on Udemy, full disclosure, I'm an investor, or equivalent to learn how to code Ruby or whatever, it's probably a good idea. How you should get your first app built, I actually think you shouldn't build shit, you should sell it. So, there's this concept called a Mevo. So me and Eric Ries have had a conversation about MVP versus Mevo. MVP is minimum viable product. I think it's dangerous because right off the bat it says product. A Mevo is a minimum economical viable offer. It doesn't have the same sex appeal, so that's why people don't say it. But it says the exact same. What's the minimum you have to produce to get somebody to pay you for whatever it is, right? And that could be a web page, it could be a PDF that you print off and go door to door. I don't care what it is. So I think if you're asking me what you should build first, it's that, and then from that you can because if you do that and then you go to an engineer that's engineers get hit up all the time, right? They have 1,000 opportunities to do a startup. They have 15 ideas of their own. They could go to Y Combinator, get 250 grand, et cetera, et cetera. So if you show up and you say, I've got 10 customers who've already given me $100 or $500, and here's what I want to build, and you went through the work to do the wireframes and come up with the design and logo, you will be surprised how quick an engineer will react to that, because the biggest risk to them, and I'm one and I know, is that they're going to work building shit that nobody's going to use. That is they want 2 things. 1, they want people to use what they build, and 2, they want to solve hard problems. So if you can convince them that your idea does both and the risk is gone, you will find great people to either bring on to build or co-found. And if you're not there yet, or you feel like you can't approach these people, then I would suggest go on Odesk and hire somebody for $10 an hour and build an MVP. But again, after you do the Mevo, right? Save yourself the trouble. But if you're curious, I come up with ideas all the time, and sometimes I wait till somebody. So when we do our recruiting, we always have projects we give people. So either I give them one of those ideas that I've had, but for example, I don't know. There's what would be an idea of something I'd want built today? Oh, this is one, and you guys can steal it. So Facebook has this new thing called Audiences. And Audiences allows you to take your customers' emails and Facebook IDs and send it into Facebook for their ad platform, and it does retargeting. But it'll also take the current customer and use an audience assessment to say, here are people that look like this. audiences require up to 10,000 customer types to actually give you a bigger data set of 1 million potential. So one of the hacks that I came up with for startups that I advise, that I've invested in, is to go find an active Facebook group and use the API to scan all the Facebook IDs of the most active participants on that group to find the audiences that you want to sell to. So nobody's built that tool yet. So I would go on Odesk and say, I'll give somebody $500 where I can enter in a group name on Facebook and you're going to give me back all the IDs, and then I feed that into Facebook. So that for you is not technical. You can start learning how to deal with engineers, because again, you can't learn to surf. I didn't tell you guys this, but you can't learn to surf reading a book. And you're not going to learn building product without building product. So, go play with Odesk, freelancer.com, etc. And at the same time, if you're serious about your startup, do the Mevo, get paid, take that, and find a technical co-founder. I mean, it's, having a co-founder is probably the most important thing you can do in your business, and you shouldn't rush into it just because you absolutely need a technical person. You come from a better position of strength if you have a prototype, you have the wireframes, etc., and learn enough to code so that they don't. I mean, engineers, and you guys are in the audience, they'll be like, oh, you can't do that. That'll take 3 days. And if you know enough, you can actually challenge them on it. But if you don't, you're going to not go down a path that you have to go to because they told you they didn't want to build it. And that's what they're saying. It doesn't take 3 days. They just have no interest in building it. But for the customer's need, it's important. So yes, you should learn to code, but not enough to actually be the programmer of your app.
Okay.
Hopefully that was helpful.
Thank you. So it's JavaScript and Ruby for me.
JavaScript is the language of the world now. So you can learn Ruby, but I would just stick to JavaScript.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much.
All the best. Thanks for the question.
Neil,
Yep.
we have a question here in Oslo.
Cool. Go for it.
Hey, hi, Oslo.
Hello. Hello, Dan.
Hello, Neil. Oh, no, you're not Neil. Neil's there. Who are you?
My name is Humayun. I'm from Oslo, by the way.
I got that.
Actually, the reason I wanted just to ask this question is because of the Mio you said. Mevo. Yeah, Mevo. For almost 6 months ago, I just got an idea, and I'm not a technical guy at all. I have been all my life. I've been kind of sales guy, so in the sales business and marketing and like that. So I got this idea, and I found someone to could. I sold it to some technical guy, and he's trying to build it, and never ever met him before. I just kind of through someone I got know him and started talking about the idea. But so the guy just told me that it will take a lot of weeks and 3 to 4 months to build it. So during that time, I just get bored, So the thing I did, I just created a picture of the idea and then went to the customers and tried to sell the idea. So the thing that happened that I totally got a lot of comments and feedback from customers, and I actually sold a couple of them the product that it wasn't ready yet. So the thing is that, as I said, I'm not a technical. I don't have any technical background, and with that feedback that I got, I just went to the coder and the technical guy, and I said, we need.
Is our question?
Yeah, it's a question. So we need a lot of kind of features in that. But how do you actually know that the guy in the backend programming is actually a good backend? That the code and everything's okay, and he's doing a great job. How do you check it? I'm asking you now.
I mean, we have like 2,500 CTOs on Clarity. I don't give a shit if you use Clarity or whatever, but the idea that I'm going to suggest is find the other technical people in the room and take them out for lunch and say, hey, here's what I gave them. What do you think? And, the reality for engineers is it can take 6 months. It can take a year, but that's up to them to decide the scope. And, what I suggest to non-founding, CEOs or whatever is you own product. And if you don't understand how to use Balsamiq and you haven't created a full clickable prototype that mocks up the whole spec and features, etc., then you're a lazy CEO founder and you don't get what it's going to take to build a tech company. Just saying, because that's your job. If you let him build it, you know what you get? You get the most ugliest, ridiculous. It's called developer designed app, and no customer is going to buy it. It's shit that Microsoft builds. Nobody buys it, right? Because it's just the engineer is like, I'm going to use jQuery and it's going to do this, and it's like, but that's just stupid. But they're not supposed to do that. So, if you have a clickable prototype, if you use a Balsamiq or any app, I mean, there's so many prototyping apps. Like, I guess I get frustrated because when I used to do this, like, there was Photoshop. You use Photoshop to do this, and it was hard. Now, you can use one of a dozen apps in an afternoon. We use Keynote to build clickable prototypes for every one of our product features and do user testing with Clarity, sharing our desktop using anyways, I'm going to stop pitching Clarity, but use Keynote, build a clickable prototype, real prototype, and show the other technical people in the room and say, what do you think it would take to build this? And use that feedback to then go back to your developer and say, I'm here in 6 weeks. You're telling me 3 months. Can we discuss what you think is going to take 3 months in this and break it down? Because I just need to understand what you assume, because other people, and I've talked to 5 of them, we're on a different page. And I just wouldn't want you to build stuff that we actually don't want, because that's what happens. So long story short, non-technical founders have to be technical enough or product focused enough to be able to keep their engineers in line, because they will go off and cause you a lot of time and resources spent. Hopefully that was helpful.
Cool. I think that was a thumbs up. We're running out of time. We had someone with a question here in Copenhagen. Do you want to come to the front and ask it?
4 minutes, so.
Yeah. Did you still want to ask a question? Yeah. We have one last quick question here.
Cool. Hey, everybody, if you want, I'm Dan Martell, 2 L's of Martell on Twitter. Follow me, tweet at me. Angie's already following me, so she can tell you how awesome I am. I'm kidding. But for real, if you guys have like one-off questions, just keep them. Don't send me like your life bio. Dan@clarity.fm. I always reply. It may not be the most thoughtful Pulitzer prize-winning email, but I do want to be helpful to people like yourselves. So definitely shoot me an email.
Cool. And actually picking up on that quickly before I pass it over, we said you would be happy to throw a free call out to someone who came here to use Clarity. With yourself.
Did I say that?
You did. Yeah. I'm gonna. Well, I've certainly.
Somebody, Neil, and it's 100% on us.
Yeah, I've advertised that, so yeah. So you said it now.
Done.
Yeah. But yeah, maybe if you just people can tweet you who came in the audience today. Maybe you just pick one at random and just tweet them back and give them the free call. Or would you prefer us to pick it?
You have to tweet at me.
Yeah.
Hashtag. What's the hashtag for the event?
VIP VoIP.
Okay, hashtag it, and then I'll pick out of those people the next 2 hours, and I'll forward that the tweet. I will email it to Neil, and Neil will then send you the discount code for Clarity.
Cool, awesome. I'll hand you over to the last question.
Perfect.
Hey, this might not be this easy to answer in the short. The thing is, you started a lot of companies, and you closed or sold or just got rid of some of them. I was wondering, since you started them yourself, have your own personal relation or emotional relation to this company ever obscured you from evaluating and criticizing these companies? And if so, how do you kind of distance yourself from doing that?
I mean, nobody wants to think their baby's ugly, but so the answer, of course, I'm biased. I mean, humans judge. That's what we do. I mean, people say you shouldn't judge. It's like, okay, don't judge. You're a rock. I mean, lions, like humans are humans because we judge and it's hard for us to be critical. I mean, have you ever been in the position where you gave somebody else advice better than you would give yourself? That happens all the time, right? Exactly. So what I do to try to overcome that is I have people around me that I know I don't like what they say, but I know it's on point, right? So if you guys follow Heaton Shaw, HNSHAH, CEO of Kissmetrics, he's one of my friends and formal advisor to Clarity. Eric Rees, Andrew Chen, these are some of the smartest people, And when I recruited them to be advisors, I pretty much said, you have 100% permission to call bullshit on anything I say, right? And I told them that because maybe they wouldn't have felt comfortable doing it. I think, over the years, you need to understand that that is a healthy thing to do, and it's scary and it sucks and you don't want to sound like an idiot, but at the same time, I don't want to fail and I want to grow faster than anybody else in my space, and the only way I can do that is by having and putting those people around me that will give me that feedback that's unbiased. Another thing that I do that's kind of ridiculous, but it works, is when we're doing product meetings, we role play. And I'll say to like one guy, I'll be like, okay, pretend you're the CEO and founder of this thing called blah, blah, blah. And we did this last Friday. It was kind of funny. And then they pitch me back the idea for the idea I had, and I give them advice, unbiased. Because if you take it and you role play and it's not called clarity and it's not my idea, it's that person's idea, then I give them the feedback and somebody else is writing it down and I go, that's what we got to do. It's just the way we are as humans. We can't help but give advice that's filtered because we know how hard it's going to be. So it's like me saying you're going to have to cut off your arm to save your life. You're really not going to want to do that. But if you know that's what you got to do, you got to do it. So how do you get yourself into a scenario where you can be that critical on your own ideas? Because that's what it's going to take to do world-class things. So, that's one part. The other thing you kind of touched on, I thought you were going to, was, so the first two companies are complete failures, right? And complete failures, I mean, whatever, I shut them down, blah, blah, blah. And then the next one almost failed, brought it back, made a lot of money. Second one, or fourth one, third and fourth, and now I'm on to my fifth one. I will not sell clarity. But here's what I've learned is the Spheric, I made that company so much about my identity that when I sold the company, I actually had to go see a therapist to talk about depression. Legit. It's the weirdest thing ever. I made millions and I was depressed. What the fuck? Who's sad for me? Nobody. And he worked with other entrepreneurs, and there's this real thing that happens called it's like the same thing that happens to mom that lose their baby. Like there was like this same thing, like what's that called? Post something to whatever. And I was like, whoa, that's bananas. But I'll just tell you don't do that. Don't make your company be who you are. Don't let your identity be attached to it, because if it fails, or even if it succeeds and it goes away, you will have so much invested, you won't even know how to be. I mean, I still remember the morning I woke up, and for the first time in 4 years, nobody cared if I got out of bed. Whoa, I was like, whoa, this is weird. Like, I can do anything and nobody cares. It felt wrong. It felt like I had no purpose in life. So, I thought that's where you're going with your question. I think that's the more interesting thing to understand today, especially if you're starting off. Like at the end of it, it doesn't matter what the outcome is. It's the journey. Don't forget that. It's the effing journey. It's not the outcome. And if you sacrifice your relationship, your health, your friends, all that stuff for your business, you're an idiot. And it's not going to be good. And I don't care if you make $100 million. If nobody likes you or nobody cares, you don't understand why you should be building a company. It really is about the day-to-day. So slow it down sometimes to have a better, I don't call it balance, just integrate it better with your life and your colleagues and all that stuff. But, it's really about, did I have fun today doing this and did I create value? Not, if I do these sacrifices, I will get this kind of outcome. That I would never build a company that way, and I don't suggest it, because it's at the end of it, you feel very empty.
Thank you.
No worries.
Cool.
Hopefully my cursing doesn't get you in trouble, Neil. I actually gave a talk this morning, and the guy presenting said, hey, we got to keep our curse words down because there's a clergyman, a priest in the audience. And I go, fuck that. That's just how I am.
Actually, we've had David Hannemar Hansen before, so you have a rival there.
DHH or Gary Vee, then I'm tame.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess we better wrap it up. We've taken an hour of your time. It's been entertaining and informative. So thank you for taking the time with us, and thank you for giving away a free call as well on Clarity. Very generous. And yeah, I think everyone's enjoyed it.
Someday, somehow, I will try to make it there, Neil.
That'll be awesome.
Together. I don't know when. Tweet at me, Dan Martell, 2 L's, #, you guys know it. I'll pick somebody in the next hour, and hopefully I'll be talking to you soon.
Cool. Thank you, Dan.
All right, guys. Thanks again for having me.